by information we know now was wrong. So,
no one can hear you. You're muted.
He's good now.
Make sure they can hear you.
Got it.
We couldn't hear the first minute.
Sorry.
Okay.
Last week.
So I think we should start at the beginning.
You're live.
Okay. Last week was a great moment for MAHA and a moment that was long overdue. Just a few short years ago, Anthony Fauci, Joe Biden, and the World Health Organization worked hand in hand to crush free speech, silence gold standard science, and lock down much of the country. All of it was justified by information we now know was flat out wrong. And Americans were told not to question, not to debate, not to trust their own eyes or their instincts or their doctors or their knowledge of their own family. But we kept on questioning. And that's what we're continuing to do now, because that's what real science is. Today, MAHA stands vindicated. The United States officially finalized its withdrawal from the corrupt World Health Organization, ending a disproportionate financial burden on U.S. taxpayers and restoring public health sovereignty to an administration that was elected with a clear mandate to make America healthy. This is a promises kept moment and a decisive break from a global bureaucracy that proved itself unaccountable and ultimately just beyond repair. So let's be clear. This is not America retreating from global leadership. It's America reclaiming that leadership. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they announced that the U.S. will now lead global health through direct, results-driven partnerships with individual nations focused on outcomes, transparency, and real public health improvements. This is just common sense public health. Cooperation without coercion, science without censorship, and accountability to all the people in the United States. Here at home and across the country, MAHA is showing the world that we get best health outcomes from following real science, from eating real food, from trusting real people to make decisions based on informed consent. That commitment to honest science was reinforced last week when the NIH announced new guidance on the HPV vaccine, showing that a single dose is at least 97% effective, statistically comparable to the traditional two-dose regimen. This is exactly what MAHA looks like in practice. Updated evidence, clear communication, and medical guidance driven by data, not by dogma. The MAHA movement continues to deliver results far beyond Washington in the past. In Tennessee, HB 809, a bill that would have shielded pesticide manufacturers like Bayer from cancer-related liability, was blocked after an overwhelming grassroots outcry. Citizens spoke up, made millions of phone calls, lawmakers listened, and corporate immunity was rejected. That can't be what MAHA lets happen in this country. Companies have to stand behind their products. So in Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton launched a sweeping investigation into big pharma and insurance companies over allegations that doctors were being bribed through bonuses, penalties, employment pressure. The investigation aims to expose the carrot and the stick medical models that place profits and compliance ahead of transparency and informed consent in pediatric care. That's what we need. Week after week, MAHA is restoring public trust through transparency, once again, real science and accountability at every level of government. There's still so much work to do, but we've made incredible progress, and the direction is clear, and the momentum is really undeniable, and the results are going to be real and constant and progressive. On today's show, we'll be joined by people who are helping to drive this transformation of healthcare in America. Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, who hasn't been on our show before, will talk about the incredible progress that he's made with next-generation immunotherapies that activate the immune system to fight cancer and other infectious diseases. Jillian Michaels will talk about the updated nutritional guidelines and her new Fox documentary. Charles Eisenstein will share his thoughts on the role of MAHA in the spiritual healing of our country. We'll also be joined by people who've been on before, Dr. Daniel Pompa, Dr. Eric Berg, Jess Kramer from the EPA, and Jim O'Neill, Deputy Secretary of HHS, and then one of our favorites, Stefanie Spear, actually my favorite, Stefanie Spear, Secretary Kennedy's Deputy Chief of Staff, will update us on what HHS has been up to lately. So first up, I'm here live with Gary Brecka, who's one of MAHA's greatest champions, just done an incredible job backing all the things that we care about. So glad to be here with him today.
Talk prepared today, but I'm really inspired by some of the guests that are going to be on here today. I wanted to just talk about a personal testimony and my witness to folks that have actually had. Now, first of all, I'm not a physician. I'm not licensed to practice medicine. I'm not qualified to give medical advice, but I can tell you what I've seen with my own eyes in these natural killer cell vaccine programs and what's called dendritic cell vaccine programs, and using the body's own immune system to turn on cancer like a termite. And I could give you dozens of stories of personal clients of mine that have had these natural killer cell treatments through either Baylor University or other programs, one called Immunosine. Sadly, these trials are run in the United States, but they're conducted outside the United States in places like Mexico, where cancer tumors and natural killer cells are introduced to each other in vivo, and there are antibodies that are created by these NK cells that have actually been able to dissolve nodular tumors. And in both of these cases, or in several of these cases, they were nodular tumors that were inoperable. They were to the size or in a location where the risk of surgery was worse than the risk of leaving the tumor in place. And I've seen with my own eyes, and some of these are very public stories, the progression in cancer treatment. I think that we are 25 years behind where the evidence-based science, lies. I also wanted to reiterate what I spoke about last week on our fight for peptides. Peptides in many cases, in about 74% of the cases, the peptides that are on the list that we are imploring the FDA to put back onto the bulk list are naturally occurring compounds in the human body. They're amino acid chains or analogs of amino acid chains that are produced in the body, like insulin, like GLP-1, that don't have the consequences that many synthetics and chemicals and often that pharmaceuticals have. They work very naturally with our human biology. By removing these from this bulk list and putting them into a research use only category, you're essentially putting them into that gray zone where physicians that want to prescribe these for their patients are having to do so at their own peril. They're outside of the standard practice of medicine. They're also not covered by their malpractice insurance. And what this has caused since they were removed from this bulk list, it wasn't a decreased use in peptides, things like tissue healing peptides like BBC 157 or growth hormone peptides like sermorelin, which was initially approved by the FDA in 1982. What it's done is it's caused these peptides to be flooded from places like China, India, Indonesia, where when you test these compounds, as we've done on several cases, I'm going to make these test results available to everyone as soon as this white paper comes out. What we found is a lot of these are just rice flour and sometimes trace heavy metals. They contain no peptides at all. What we're imploring the FDA to do is to push this back into a regulated framework where compound pharmacies, which are regulated by the FDA, can use stability. They can guarantee stability, sterility, potency. They can guarantee chain of custody and put a physician, someone who's licensed to practice medicine, a clinician, in between the patient and the pharmacy, and put a pharmacy in between the compound and the practitioner, so that there is some guarantee of stability, sterility, and potency. A lot of what are used against the peptide argument are injuries that occurred from peptides that were imported under these nutritional acts, and they were not actually compounded by licensed pharmacies, but yet that brush paints the industry very, very broadly. And I know a lot of people that are on this call have benefited from peptides. Your loved ones have benefited from peptides. I'm certainly not making a case that you get on peptides if you're not. I am making a case that someone who is licensed to practice medicine should have the right to prescribe these for their patients if they feel that it's in their patient's best interest. And we should be able to trust the origin of these peptides and their stability, their sterility, and their potency, so they can be as effective as they've been for the last decade. So there will be a white paper that we're going to circulate middle of next week that will have some of the biggest names in academia, not names like myself, I mean highly qualified names. These will be MDs, PhDs, researchers that are very familiar with the evidence-based science, that are familiar with gold standard science. And I would implore you to read this white paper. It's very short, it's very concise, it cites all of the research. It's only about 5 pages long. It will have more than 800 cited references and really help us get the message out to the public that we're on the precipice of potentially widening the lanes for these compounds that have been so effective for so many people. And I can't believe that I got my time right down to 10 seconds. So I will yield that back. But thank you for your time, Tony.
Yeah, thanks so much, Gary. And so many good points there that, it's hard to know where we get our information from. And so many people who come out and they say bad things on things like peptides or on compound pharmacies, those messages, those stories are coming from people who want to attack MAHA, who want to, who disagree with the kind of progress that we believe is so important in this country. So, we have to all be, cognizant of that there often is a deeper story. And that when we hear something is dangerous, it might just mean that it's a danger to a big corporation's profits, to a big pharmaceutical company's profits. And it might actually be something that's so important for the American public to have access to. So thanks so much, Gary. Next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg. He's done just incredible work for the MAHA movement. He's known as the Knowledge Doctor, and he's earned that title by, getting through to something like 40 million followers. And he's helped them look at their health in ways that they didn't before. And he explains things in sort of very simple, easy to comprehend ways. And he's so important to the MAHA movement, partially for that reason, because a big part of MAHA is to make it easier and affordable to be healthy. So we need people to understand the things that they can do and the steps that they can take. So thanks a lot, Dr. Berg, for all the incredible things you've been doing.
Thank you so much, Tony, and I appreciate what you're doing as well, leading this MAHA group. It's just very important. I wanted to touch on, what I had to do in my house. I had to spend a lot of money for a filter to pull out a chemical out of the water called fluoride. And so I want to touch on a recent EPA announcement of the first series about a reevaluation of fluoride in our drinking water for over 40 years. It's in the city water. If you don't have a filter for your shower or your house, you're getting exposed to it. It really affects your skin. It makes your skin very irritated. But it does a lot more damaging things too. So here's something that most Americans don't realize. The fluoride added to the water is not a natural mineral. It's not like calcium fluoride. It's not a nutrient. There's no systemic benefits, but it is linked to brain, thyroid, bone, and hormonal issues. It's basically a toxic industrial byproduct of phosphate fertilizer manufacturing captured from smokestacks and sold to the water systems. I mean, it's just like crazy. So it gets accumulated in the bone. It accumulates in your pineal gland. Fluoride typically only works topically on teeth, and this is why we have it in toothpaste, right? But you don't swallow it or eat your toothpaste, but we swallow it in the drinking water, and it has absolutely no benefits once the teeth has been formed. So this whole idea of we need fluoride in the water is ridiculous. In 2019, the NIH-funded research found that higher fluoride exposure during pregnancy lowered IQ in children. Since then, the National Toxicology Program included that fluoride is a neurotoxic thing at common experience exposure levels, especially for developing brains. And there's no established safety threshold during pregnancy as well. So, and then fluoride doesn't just stop at the brain. It blocks the uptake of iodine, which actually can suppress your thyroid. And we have a lot of thyroid problems nowadays as well. So we have all that toxicity, but also it accumulates. It doesn't just go right out of your body. Like I said, it goes into the bones. It makes your bones more fragile. And also in the pineal gland specifically, out of all the soft tissues, the pineal seems to suck it up the most. And the pineal has everything to do with helping you sleep. So there could be an effect with sleeping, insomnia, mood disorders, all these other things that we don't even know about. I mean, even in Europe, I mean, they have abandoned this water fluoridation decades ago, and their cavities haven't been lowered. So you get cavities by eating sugar and starches, not by the lacking fluoride. So the real question is, does fluoride prevent cavities? It's why are we swallowing this stuff in the first place? So I'm excited that they're reevaluating this, and I think it's going to be very important to get it out of our water supply because it's unnecessary. I think our health is going to improve. Over to you, Tony.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Berg. And it really is fascinating that we've focused for so many years on the things that will, potentially make up for all the other things that we're doing. So we talk about putting fluoride in water to make up for the fact that everybody in America is downing just pounds and pounds of sugar every day, mostly children. So, and then the idea that we're doing that to make up for that, this thing that's just terrible for children. And then we find out that the remedy is also terrible for children, maybe even worse, maybe scrambling their brains even worse. So, if it's not the dyes or the sugar or the chemicals, then it's the water, it's the glyphosate in the water. So there is so much work to be done. And it's great that you're focused on it. It's great that HHS is really focused on it now. And, our next speaker is Jess Kramer from the EPA, and they have made it very clear that they're focused on fluoride and, making it so that at the very least, municipalities, cities don't have to use fluoride if they, want to choose not to. So, but she can tell you more, where they are there. So Jess Kramer, is President Trump's pick for the assistant administrator to the EPA's Office of Water in Trump's EPA. And, we've had her on here before. She's, obviously doing really great work. She brings real hands-on experience, from years of working in this space. And we're just so happy to have her on the show and to continue our partnership with the EPA.
Thanks so much, Tony. I'm so excited to be back. I apologize here if I have frozen into a very unflattering pose, but I apologize that my voice has given out a little bit, and so bear with me on that front. But I'm so excited to be here today following Dr. Eric Berg talking about fluoride. Happy to give you an overview in a little bit more detail of EPA's recent actions on fluoride. Obviously, making America healthy again is a top priority for Administrator Zeldin and for me. As a mother, it's important to me that every American can rely on their drinking water. And I have a 5-month-old. And so, Dr. Berg, what you were talking about just recently about intake while you're pregnant, all of those things have a special place in my heart simply because I just went through having my second kiddo. And so those things are really important to me. I want to talk about the fact that the Trump EPA is taking public concerns about fluoride very seriously, especially questions about its potential impacts on children, pregnant women, and other sensitive populations. On top of that, we are committed to following gold standard science and using radical transparency as we do so. I talked about those two things the last time I was on the show, and so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that today. In response to Administrator Zeldin's directive issued last year, EPA has accelerated its review of fluoride years ahead of our next statutorily scheduled deadline to do so. In moving quickly, we are ensuring that EPA's standards under the Act reflect the most current peer-reviewed science. It's important, though, also to clear up, I think, there are a lot of questions about what EPA's role is, especially EPA's role as it relates to regulating fluoride as opposed to making recommendations on adding fluoride to water. So I want to be clear, EPA's authority under the Safe Drinking Water Act allows us to set limits for fluoride and other contaminants in drinking water. The last time we did this for fluoride was in 1986, in which year the agency set the maximum contaminant level, which is the regulatory level, the enforceable limit for fluoride at 4 milligrams per liter. That standard was most recently reviewed by the agency in 2024, but when we came in this administration, we found that review concluded without evaluating a very important set of research that was most up to date on the impacts of fluoride on public health as it relates to drinking water. Again, I want to be clear that we don't make the recommendations. EPA doesn't recommend adding fluoride to drinking water. I like to say we don't make recommendations, we just make regulations here in OW. And so I think it's important to clear up what I think is a little bit of confusion. That recommendation, any recommendations to fluoridate water actually come out of HHS and CDC as opposed to EPA. And so those decisions then to fluoridate drinking water actually happen at a state or local level. And so it's important to think about how all those things fit together. And I was pleased over the moon that Administrator Zeldin and Secretary Kennedy joined the state of Utah last year to highlight that the state's no longer going to be adding fluoride to water. And in fact, that the state decided to restrict adding fluoride to water. I only have 43 seconds left, so I'm going to start to talk a little faster. What did we do last week? Last week, we announced a preliminary assessment plan and literature survey. This is a critical step in EPA kickstarting what is otherwise a 6-year wait time for the next review process to happen. We concluded the last one in 2024. It wouldn't happen again until 2030. We're kickstarting that review with this preliminary assessment. This assessment is the initial findings of our team here at OW screening over 260,000 studies on fluoride and whittling that universe down to 500 studies that we think are most relevant for a new health assessment on fluoride. We are focusing on brain development, such as decreased IQ in children, and also tooth development, specifically dental fluorosis. I want to be clear also, our assessment will only focus on potential harmful effects and will not consider beneficial effects. I also want to talk about radical transparency and gold standard science in the limited time that I have left. I'm very excited about the radical transparency that's happening here. This preliminary assessment will be out for public comment for 30 days. We want to hear what everybody has to say. We want to make sure that we get this right. We want you to have the opportunity to ensure that we have reviewed all of the information that you think we need to be taking in front of us when it comes to the science. I'm also very excited about a tool that we will be launching that actually puts all of the results of our literature assessment online. You can actually use it as an interactive tool to determine why we either did or did not include our literature assessment in that body of 500 articles that we're going to use to make our health assessment, which will then be used to determine whether or not we need to take further regulation on this. I know I'm over. I'm going to stop. I'm excited about it. And I'm excited about what we're doing in partnership with Secretary Kennedy as well.
Thanks so much, Jess. And it was so brave of you to come on with a sore throat and get so much out and get so much in and in the heads of thousands of people who are tuned into this. And, I just want to make it clear that we have a MAHA president now. We have a MAHA head of the EPA now, Lee Zeldin. You are clearly MAHA. And, what we want and what you talked about was radical transparency. What MAHA wants and what you clearly want is to talk to everybody, is to hear all of the arguments, is to engage with all the stakeholders. We want to get them on the show. You want to get them into, board meetings, to come to the EPA. I've seen you guys do that before. This is the most open, transparent government in these areas that we've ever seen. And I think everybody should take good advantage of that, not attack the government, but try to really find ways to work with the government to get the very best possible health outcomes. So thanks so much for coming on again, and hope you heal quickly.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the incredible Stefanie Spear. Stefanie is Deputy Chief of Staff and Special Counselor to Secretary Kennedy. And as I've said before, she's doing incredible work, just historic work. She, is Secretary Kennedy's right-hand person, has Kennedy's back, has President Trump's back 100% of the time. And we're just so glad to have her here, to know her, and to see all the great work that she's getting done.
Thank you, Tony. Gosh, your introductions of me always make me feel really good. I appreciate you. Well, thanks for having me on today. It has been yet another busy day. It's people always say, "What are your daily days like?" And we get a lot done. We roll up our sleeves, and every day seems to snowball into lots of issues and lots of things. I'm really glad. Hi, Charles. I see Charles. Good to see you. I'm thrilled that Jess came on. Jess and I have been trying to get a meeting together for quite a while. So to follow her is an honor. And, we especially appreciate our efforts with other agencies like EPA and USDA. We definitely couldn't get this work done without cooperation and partnership with the other agencies. USDA was vital, obviously, in working together to unveil our new dietary guidelines, which has had just a resounding impact already. We're working to implement the dietary guidelines now, but it's just been fantastic to see the response from everyone, from everyday Americans, from kids, and from health agencies all over, just touting the simple message, the common sense message of eat real food. So very excited about all that. Many of you may know we kicked off our Take Back Your Health tour last week. We went to Pennsylvania and we were in the State House. And hopefully everybody saw and has shared the wonderful speech the Secretary Kennedy gave on the steps inside the rotunda. He shared just the excitement about our dietary guidelines and everything that we're doing, including MFN, Most Favored Nation, drug pricing. We're lowering drug costs for every American. We also afterward went to Kreider Farm, a dairy farm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and got to meet, firsthand with the farmers there. We got to see a baby calf that had just been born 30 minutes before we arrived, and really seeing firsthand the family farmer and the impact that it can have on human health and on the local community. So that was, really spectacular. We just posted yesterday a video on Secretary Kennedy's X account that talks about our tour to Kreider Farm. I hope everybody has seen that. I want to do special thanks to MAHA Action, to Tony and the team, and to everybody on this call. You guys are all playing a vital role in propping us up here in the government at EPA and USDA and HHS and helping us make America healthy again. We couldn't do it without you. So I encourage everyone to continue to, share our content, stay active, stay connected with MAHA Action, and continue to tout the great efforts that everybody's making in our plight to make America healthy again. None of us would be here if it weren't for the leadership and the courage of President Trump. Every day I get to see firsthand how the president and his team work so hard in conjunction with all the cabinet members, all the agencies on the priorities that are best for the American people. We have made, great strides. I think it's been the most historic moment at HHS in history. All of the things that FDA, NIH, CDC, CMS have been able to do. So we are going to continue to work hard every day. They don't call it public service for nothing. And, continue on this plight to make America healthy again. We will be, it feels kind of like campaigning again. We're back on the road. We're going to be taking our Take Back Your Health tour all over the nation. Hopefully, many of you will be able to participate and come visit us when we're in your city or in your town. So please continue to stay connected through all Secretary Kennedy's social channels and keep sharing the great work that's being done. Thank you so much, Tony, and everyone else on the call.
Thanks so much, Stefanie. And, so many great points that you made that, this is the beginning of a health revolution. You're on a Take Your Health Back tour. And that's a part of this revolution that, people having access to healthier food, people having the knowledge to determine what healthy food is, people, really being in a position where they can fight for themselves, where, like Bobby Kennedy has said many times now, they can become CEOs of their own body. They can have maximum choice. They can make good decisions, and that we can make this country really healthy once again. And what we've gotten over so many years now is fake, flawed science, corporate, corrupt science. And now we're getting real science, gold standard science, and radical transparency. And I'm so grateful for the work that you guys are doing, especially you.
Hear, hear, Tony. Thank you.
Next up, we have Jillian Michaels. And Jillian is the host of the Keeping It Real podcast. She is a world-renowned fitness trainer, best-selling author, and a certified nutrition consultant. In her new Fox Nation documentary, Toxic, she really goes into the food crisis in America and takes a hard look at farming and, the entire system that has led to the incredibly bad health outcomes, and then to think about what's possible to turn that around. So thank you so much, Jillian, for all the work that you're doing and the great things that you're producing.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I want to take a second to just shout out all of, or a large amount, I don't even think I can track all of the MAHA accomplishments thus far, but the vaccine schedule overhaul, no one thought that was going to get done. I was so impressed. The war on toxic ingredients, the reevaluation of the grass rule, Operation Stork looking at baby formula, the Trump RX announcement. Probably the one I'm most excited about is a toss-up between no sex changes for minors, which is so long overdue. And I think those of us who really understand what has gone on with this narrative it is a big pharma narrative. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And while I think people who are for sex changes for minors are well-intentioned, they also have not looked at things like the CAS review or the WPATH files. And this is such a monumental step towards protecting vulnerable kids who can then make these big life-altering choices when they are of age and they can process the decisions that they're making, and their body is not going to be as vulnerable to what are literally off-label cancer drugs. That is just staggering, and the fact that it hasn't really had a ping in the mainstream media has been pretty mind-boggling to me. I'm incredibly impressed and excited about that. The food pyramid overhaul, I'm actually working on a book right now, looking at the ways in which what I call the catastrophic quartet of big ag, big food, big pharma, and big insurance have captured our government from every single layer, whether it's truth capture, economic capture. And when you have the food pyramid, it's a subsidy flow that was captured to the tune of about $600 billion, which is one of the things that made it so difficult for the average American to have access to healthy food and to make healthy food affordable. This is such a big deal, and people just think it's like a graphic that's in their kids' elementary school. So for those of us that appreciate how impactful changing the food pyramid is, very, very grateful for the work that's being done. A few things that I do want to kind of put on the radar here that I think will need to be addressed. The situation with gray market pets, I think that something is going to need to be done here. We're seeing people being forced into the gray market because they can't get these things from real compounding pharmacies and then dosing themselves. I mean, I see it all the time. I get phone calls regularly for people who've bought GLP-1s online or MOTS-C or BPC 157 and literally medicating themselves through stuff they got on the gray market because an actual doctor is not able to get it from an actual compounding pharmacy. And this is a problem. And I think just blocking research peptides isn't going to do the trick because people are getting them from China. They're getting them from Austria. I've been guilty of getting cerebral lysine from Russia. I think something here needs to be done. And I would simply encourage MAHA. You've been doing such an incredible job at cleaning up the mess that's been made, but there is some looking forward towards the future I think needs to be done and pretty quickly before somebody manages to get themselves significantly hurt. And that's really all I'm going to say about that one, but really want to make sure that's on the radar because I'm sure Gary is probably going to be able to speak to that one if he chooses to better than I am, but I see it very regularly all the time. And just again, thanks to the team at MAHA for contributing to the documentary Toxic on Fox Nation and for all the hard work you guys are doing. You're crushing it. You've exceeded my expectations and I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jillian. And it's such an important message that, we are at war on toxic food and big ag, big food, big pharma, this corporate capture that was able to actually turn a reasonable food pyramid upside down so that everybody thought that eating toxic foods, that eating things that were just so demonstrably bad for you were actually doing something good. And their government was telling them that because they were getting bribed by these big corporations. So, this is the time when we can turn that around. It's the opportunity of a generation. And I'm so glad to be part of that. And, when it comes to things like peptides, I've said it before, but I would like to really, come back to it time after time that big pharma doesn't want the public to be able to get the right dosage for themselves, be able to get cutting edge peptides, be able to get all of these new kinds of products that are possible because they just want the one size fits all system where it's just a gravy train for them. And they're going to fight tooth and nail and they're going to get articles published and they're going to attack you and attack Gary Brecka and attack all the compounders. But we know what's really going on. And that's part of the reason for this show, that we're going to highlight it so that the rest of the world does too.
Thanks so much.
So anyway, thanks so much for coming on. Next up, we have the great Charles Eisenstein. And he is a speaker, a writer, a philosopher. He's known for his books on cultural questions, on economics, all kinds of things. But just an incredibly wise man, a philosophical man, and somebody who's just an important part of the MAHA movement. We're glad to have him fighting with us, and I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Tony. Really happy to be here again and to see some familiar faces. And to, I guess, I feel kind of like celebrating. It's been a year now, hasn't it, more or less, that Bobby Kennedy has been in office at HHS. And maybe I was a little bit cynical at the beginning about how much he'd really be able to get done with himself and a handful of political appointees in an institution with a $2 trillion budget and tens of thousands of career staff. But the accomplishments that Bobby Kennedy and his team, and I don't know if Stefanie, if you're still here, but including Stefanie, it's just mind-blowing. To make such an impact in such a huge entrenched bureaucracy. And Jillian mentioned some of the accomplishments. I would add to it the stopping research into gain of function, the new research going into to really try to get down to the bottom of the autism question, what's really causing autism. And the changing the vaccine schedule, the food, the real food initiative. These are not only significant for their immediate impact, but they are loosening the vice grip of entrenched interests, especially the big pharmaceutical companies, but also agribusiness and chemical companies. Although I don't want to, here's the thing. When we speak of Make America Healthy Again, yes, we're talking about physical health, but we're also talking about social health and political health. And I think it's a mistake to write anybody off. We need to understand that there are good people within every institution. And I think that the accomplishments of Bobby Kennedy in his first year, in part, are because there are lots of good people in HHS, lots of good career people who were chafing at the corruption and the distortion of science for so many decades. So that's one thing I want to bring up. So even the chemical companies, even the agricultural companies, and those who we might be skeptical of in maybe EPA or USDA, who somebody is not a fixed quantity. People become the product of their relationships. This is true in personal life, and it's true in political life too. So one of the relationships that I want to just mention here is the relationship between the MAHA movement and these elected officials, and the career officials also in places like HHS. We have a tremendous impact that can shift people who the cynical part of ourselves would want to write off and say, well, they were a chemical industry lobbyist or something like that. If we're going to hold people in who they have been, then this country is never going to emerge from the intense divisiveness that we're still working our way through right now. And I think that MAHA, we didn't start I don't know. Many of us have entered the MAHA movement through various paths. For me, I've been a lifelong anti-vaxxer, vaccine skeptic, let's say. But my entree into this movement came as Bobby Kennedy's speechwriter, and working on the campaign leadership team. And originally, our campaign wasn't just about health, as you know. It was about healing on a national level. But health is especially important to that because it's something that unites everybody on a deep level. We all are embodied beings. And if there are toxins in the environment, in the air, in the water, in the soil, in the food, it affects everybody, whether they are a Democrat or a Republican. As Bobby says, there are no Democratic babies or Republican babies. So MAHA started out as a unity movement, if you trace it back to the Kennedy campaign. And we can continue to be a unity movement. We can continue through our relations with elected officials, with politicians of both parties, with the career bureaucrats. We can bring them into a unified national vision of health. And so I want to just really emphasize that in this time of, if you read the news and you're on social media all the time, it looks like this country is more divided than ever. But is it really? Or is it only if you focus on certain divisive issues that it looks divided? What about the latent unity that comes from from basic shared human values? And among them, of course, is health. So, I'll end with that. And just one real quick thing also, just to pick up on the peptides issue. This is also one of the longer term benefits of loosening the vice grip of these entrenched interests. 1,000 flowers will bloom, including everything we have called alternative that cannot thrive in the corporate-controlled, profit-based model. So we are at the brink of a new era here, only 1 year in, and really looking forward to seeing how it accelerates going forward.
Charles, that was really great, and there's so much there that I just love. You know, the idea that that we can't write anybody off. You know, that we don't want to look at what's wrong with people or the things that people have done in the past. What we want to think about is what's possible for the future. And you said that so well. You want to add something to it?
Yeah, I mean, if I were going to write off everybody who's done foolish things in the past, I would write myself off first. So, yeah, let's be generous with each other, and give people the benefit of the doubt and give them the opportunity to prove their sincerity.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that what's possible for the future. Like, it really doesn't matter what anybody's done, what any big corporation has done. Even if the corporation exists to make a lot of money, let's try to persuade them to make a lot of money doing things that are good for people rather than doing things that are bad for people. I mean, that's a better business model in the end, because we all know that if you look at all sides of it, it's more expensive to eat unhealthy foods. It's more expensive to live an unhealthy life. It's more expensive to have a life that doesn't have any positive spirituality in it. So that, I think, is a way that we can say, look, make all the money you want, but and let's let MAHA, let's go out there as the MAHA warriors, or maybe not even warriors, because we don't want war. We want peace. We want people to work together to create a better world. So thanks so much for coming on once again, and I hope you'll just keep coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. We'd be happy to.
Next up, we have the great Jim O'Neill from Health and Human Services and acting director of the CDC. He's been working closely with Dr. Oz to investigate fraud and save precious taxpayer dollars so that we can use those dollars to make Americans more healthy, to make it easier and more affordable to be healthy in this country. So he's been a big part of the incredible changes that have been going on, and we're just so glad to have you on, Jim. Welcome.
Thank you, Tony. It's great to see you. It's great to be back with MAHA Action. Lots of great stuff is going on, many of it advancing great core MAHA priorities. I want to start with two big major MAHA priorities where I have some updates. So all of you followed all last year as we cooperated with the Department of Agriculture to build, for the first time, rigorously scientific dietary guidelines for Americans. The updates are that we have launched randomized controlled trials on saturated fats. We're very interested in getting more understanding of metabolism in saturated fats. And it's also important to take this latest nutrition science and propagate it through everywhere that could help people make better decisions. And one of those places is medical care. So many doctors, unfortunately, don't really understand nutrition, and yet patients expect them to rely on the medical advice that they're getting to include nutrition advice. So what we've been doing, Secretary Kennedy and I, since last summer, is talking to medical schools and talking to residencies and talking to accreditors and encouraging them to make nutrition a core part of all medical education. We're getting a lot of great response, and we're very excited that nutrition will be part of medical training and part of medical care. Another core MAHA priority, of course, is vaccines. As you all know, a few weeks ago, I adopted a new core schedule of vaccines recommended for all children. The core consensus is much smaller than the older CDC guidelines. So the update here is that an industry group, the American Academy of Pediatrics, a few days ago announced that they are making their own recommendation, which is the much longer list. And, everyone has the right to make whatever recommendations they want. I just want to assure you I'm standing by my decision, and also that we are pursuing new science on vaccine safety across the department and continuing to look for more safety signals on more vaccines and understand better infectious disease and the best way to use therapeutics and other measures, as well as vaccines, to prevent disease in a way that is safe and that respects informed consent and parental responsibilities and encourages more conversations between parents and doctors. Another interesting public health update since last time. All of us remember 6 years ago watching in horror not only the beginnings of the COVID pandemic, but the very uninformed, unscientific, brutal response of the so-called World Health Organization, which immediately started lying and obfuscating and demanding very heavy-handed and unscientific responses to the pandemic. So I'm very delighted that last week the United States withdrew from the so-called World Health Organization. We just noticed, just as CDC last year was really opening to radical transparency, working hard to regain the trust that had been lost during the pandemic, World Health Organization was doing the opposite, getting defensive, refusing to reform, refusing to admit its mistakes, refusing to make better plans and more commitment to transparency going forward. So we're out. Instead, we recognize the United States, under Secretary Kennedy and President Trump's leadership, is now the world's best scientific public health authority. That's why we've reformed CDC. That's why we've reformed FDA. That's why we're doing real rigorous science. And we are pursuing sound, respectful, human rights-based responses to infectious disease, better technology, better coordination across countries, and no more World Health Organization. And finally, you all know about PFAS, the 12,000 water repellent chemicals that are associated with so many negative health effects. CDC has been studying them very significantly, one of the largest studies of PFAS ever, with more than 6,500 participants. We've already found associations with high blood pressure and cholesterol levels, and the study continues. We will have more results next year. We're also keeping an eye on new short-chain PFAS, one of the many toxins that we are doing more studies and research on at HHS.
Jim, thanks so much. It just seems like you're right in the middle of so much just incredible work, and work that's real science. And when you talk about the WHO, it was just an organization that was blatantly corrupt, and that wasn't really doing science, that was holding science back. And so it's such an incredible move to then dump that, because real science always means if something isn't working, if there are new ways to look at it, new things to do, new ways to approach it, then you pursue those, and you don't continue to pursue things that fail, and you don't allow people or organizations to fail their way to the top. And that, I think, is what's happened in the past, and that's what is not going to happen now. So thanks so much for the really important and world-changing work you've been doing.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony. The work continues. I'm so glad this whole group is part of it.
Thanks again. Next up, we talk a lot about all the things that we do that make us sick, all the terrible foods that we've been, persuaded to put into our body, that we've been, lied to, we've been propagandized. And that's, those kinds of things have led, to the incredible increase in cancer. So next up, we have Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, and he is a physician, a scientist, a biotech person, pioneering cancer therapies, but he's also just a visionary and someone who has a view of what's possible that I think a lot of entrenched groups, a lot of powerful people would prefer that he didn't have these ideas, and that he couldn't actually use these ideas to make people so much more healthy and to cure so much cancer in this country. So I'm incredibly grateful that, he's a really successful guy. He doesn't have to do this, but he's putting everything on the line. He's going on every podcast. He's at this day and night because he wants to cure cancer. He believes that he can do it. And so many of these forces are conspiring to slow that down because they have other priorities. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to have you here, Patrick.
Thanks, Tony, for having me. So I'm glad to be here. So I assume you want me to now just give you a little bit. This is the first time on your show, so I'm just going to riff about exactly what I've been pursuing for 35 years. I think when you think about what at stake here, this is truly, I believe, a core principle of MAHA. It turns out that for 45 years, I'm a surgeon at UCLA and seen many cancer patients. We've been doing this wrong, where we've been giving chemotherapy and radiation as a core principle of curing cancer. And it turns out that we wipe out a cell that's been evolved for 450 million years called the natural killer cell. This cell, I wrote my first paper in 1990, is the cell that protects us from cancer. This cell protects us from preventing cancer. My greatest fear now is there's turbo cancers. For the first time, I'm seeing young children with pancreatic cancer, colon cancer. 2 kids died with 12 and 13-year-olds with metastatic pancreatic cancer. What is happening? And the reason what's happening is, sadly, this is post-COVID. We just announced at our conference that COVID, sadly, is going to act like HPV and hepatitis. It's oncogenic. So what I did not want to announce, which was the scariest moment of trying to say that, but so I brought on UCLA, University of San Francisco, Mount Sinai scientists who confirmed that what's happening, we are now all getting immunosuppressed and turbo cancer. So we faced, in this nation, in this world, what I call an epidemic of cancers that's happening. So what's the solution? Thank God for the last 15 to 20 years, I focused my effort on this thing called the natural killer cell. All of us on this room, all of us in this call have this natural killer cell. But once you have an infection or COVID or chemotherapy, radiation, you wipe out these natural killer cells, which makes completely no logic. There's many forces that have many reasons wanting to pursue chemotherapy, high-dose radiation, etc. You can use chemotherapy, can use radiation, but you got to protect the NK cells. So it turns out your body also has not just a peptide, but a thing called a cytokine called IL-15. That has been identified since 2012 by the National Cancer Institute as the most important molecule that could cure cancer. I spent my career, and we now have an FDA-approved IL-15, but just for bladder cancer. So I've been pursuing then separately for patients with glioblastoma, triple-negative breast cancer, head and neck cancer, Merkel cell cancer. And what we're seeing is complete responses. So the opportunity now for us to say to whoever the powers may be, and MAHA is the exact vehicle, you could not make America healthy again unless we try and treat chronic diseases, whether it be HIV, diabetes, and cancer. So what we've done is I had a meeting not only with the regulatory authorities here, since it's already approved, but the Saudi government came and visited us and said, we have 37 million people, the average age is 30 years. We want this for our nation. And they just approved it now in Saudi Arabia. The sad news, I have 13,000 requests now sitting, desperate calls for this treatment. Some of them want to know, can they go to Saudi Arabia? We need to bring this to this country. It's invented here. And this is really what we really mean by America first. I just am about to announce that we're going to create what I call the World Bank of Natural Killer Cells. I can now take your blood and grow billions of natural killer cells, store them forever, and they are ready and activated. God forbid you have an infection or cancer or sepsis. So I'm pleased to come onto this show, Tony, to really speak to your audience. It's a complicated story, but not that complicated. We will be releasing the first book, hopefully in February or March, where we'll have the patients tell their stories. We have patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer that live for 7 years. I treated Senator Reid for years. We have patients who fly in from all over the world, in which we're now treating them with glioblastoma, and recurrent glioblastoma, in which we're having now near complete responses. So this is the beginning. We have done randomized clinical trials in lung cancer. We've now tripled the survival in lung cancer, and this is what Saudi Arabia approved. So thank you for giving me the time to at least talk a little bit about our work.
Thanks so much, Patrick. And what I always like to come back to is that we have to, as a nation and as people, just always be willing to question authority and, question everything. And it may be that the ways that we've treated cancer in the past, that they're just flat out wrong. That we just got it wrong, as we have so many times in the history of medicine. And it may be that the way that you have developed to treat cancer is just better. It's just better, it's newer, it's wiser, it's more likely to work. And we have to be open to that. And it's always hard for people to be open to the idea that everything that they believed about something could be wrong. And then there are always going to be lots of vested interests for all kinds of reasons, most of them connected to money. But I think it's so important to be open to big ideas. That's at the center, at the heart of what MAHA stands for. And your ideas, these are very, very, very big ideas. And these are ideas that can change real people's lives, cure millions of people from the scourge of cancer that has overtaken this country. So I just think we need to look at this. We need to embrace it. We need to study it, learn from it, and we need to find a way to cure cancer. And I want you to help us get there. And I want to do everything that I can do to make sure that you get the platform and the access that are necessary to make the arguments, and that I believe that those arguments will succeed. And I hope that that's what's going to happen.
Thank you, Tony. And just to give you some insight, it's not my idea. This is a God-given cell, 450 million years in evolution. You have it in you. The power is within us. Our body is the factory. We need to just activate the cell, which we can do with one single injection, which is already FDA approved, but just for bladder cancer. The opportunity for us to change the paradigm of cancer care, where we don't ravage the body with high-dose chemotherapy. It wipes out the exact cells that are trying to protect you. It makes no sense, and I thank you for allowing me to actually explain a little bit of that.
Thanks so much. Great to have you on. Hope that you'll come on again soon.
I will.
Yeah, just so important. And we are all so fortunate to have this opportunity, this moment in time where we have a MAHA president, where we have Secretary Kennedy, who's putting everything on the table. You can question everything. Let's do science better. And that's what's happening now. And I just feel that the power and the incredible inspiration of this moment. So next up, we have Dr. Daniel Pompa, and he is the author of the Cellular Healing Diet. He's a leading cellular health expert, teaching practitioners worldwide, and just, somebody who's been on this show before, but he's done just great work, and he's healed himself, and he'll tell you a few things about what's been going on lately for him. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me. I'm heading to see Gary Brecka here in a bit, so I'm glad I got on now, or you'd be having me from an Uber. But, I have to say there's so many things to celebrate what MAHA has already done, and Secretary Kennedy and our Deputy Secretary was just on. What an incredible feat that has been accomplished in 1 year. I want to focus on something that I feel like hasn't gotten enough attention, but wow, is it a big victory? But I do want to say this, the pyramid being flipped. Okay, that's a big deal. And it's not just a big deal because people would say, well, I don't pay attention to that anyway. It's a big deal because it directs how we're feeding kids in schools, even our military. It really directs what happens from the government down. That's a big deal. But I do want to say this, South Park had it figured out 11 years ago. You know that? On South Park, they flipped the pyramid and they said, it's a match, and all these people started getting healthy. So if you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. It's pretty humorous, actually. You'll see an Instagram post from me using that piece from South Park. But Bobby flipped it, and after South Park. But the House appropriations bill, what a victory this is, where Big Chemical was able to hide behind, I believe it was Section 453, where it literally, like vaccine companies, keeps them from being sued, right? So therefore, they can keep products on the market going. I mean, how many wins did Bobby have with glyphosate, showing that this is a cancer causer and disrupts the gut, the brain, and yet it's still being sold. Oh, all the other companies all the other countries are banning it, except here in the U.S. I want to focus on this victory from shutting that down, where they can hide and not really have to worry about their product or the injuries from it, because that was it. It protected them from being sued from the injuries. The same thing it's protected Big Pharma from being sued against vaccines all the way back in 1986. So I think Bobby's going to move that too, and I pray that he does, because everything starts there. If we can change that protection, then we can change everything else that happens. But here's what I want everyone to hear. Bobby said this a few weeks ago, I believe, that it's not a gluten problem to why so many people are gluten sensitive and have gut issues. This is a chemical problem. And if we could just pick on one, and this bill shuts many of these chemicals down, or I should say this, it will in the future. But glyphosate, which we know opens up the gut barrier and allows the protein, gluten, and many others, by the way, to cross right over the gut. As a matter of fact, you may not even have what we call leaky gut or a specific health condition, autoimmune condition of the gut, and this still can affect you. Studies have been done showing that if you eat food with glyphosate, it can affect something called zonulin, open up the gut, and undigested proteins go into the bloodstream, which then the body starts to make antibodies against those proteins. You wonder why we're seeing this massive rise in mast cell activation, food allergies, everyone running from gluten, everyone running from oxalates, lectins, plant toxins. Hold on a second. I'm 60 years old. We ate the same wheat. Oh, I know it was hybridized and changed, but it was the same wheat that, different than what was eating in Europe, but we grew up on it. It's the chemical. Because where were all the gluten problems when I was a kid? Many of you were. Where were they? There weren't any. So what's changed? Well, I'll tell you what's changed. The glyphosate went like this in the 90s, straight up in the 2000s. And entered not just all the gut problems that we're seeing. If it were only so easy just to change people's diet for them, their guts to get better, take probiotics. See, it's not happening, right? If it was only so easy to change people's diet to even get them to lose weight, see, that's not happening either. And when you go into countries like Europe and Italy, where glyphosate's been banned, you see a lot different people, don't you? Yeah, you don't see as many fat people there. But see, it's not about the carbohydrates, although we should probably eat less in the processed food. See, it's not that simple. It's the chemicals that our food in this country is carrying into our children and us that's driving the epidemic of gut problems. I would argue thyroid conditions, hormone resistance, weight loss resistance, all the conditions that we're seeing, the brain fog. This is a chemical issue. And I applaud the secretary for what he's done on the vaccine schedule, and the deputy secretary was just on. I applaud you, because again, that's where the bucket starts filling. If we can just change the amount of vaccines and the way they're being distributed from, obviously from the womb to the tomb, then we're going to impact every condition that we're dealing with today, because it is a toxic issue. Bobby knows it. I've had the conversations with him, right? And our food is carrying it in. But I'm telling you, this one win right here is going to change things. Unfortunately, maybe not for a few years, maybe not for beyond, but I'm telling you, it takes away a major protection of the chemicals that are going into our kids, causing these gut problems, which are causing brain problems and immunity problems. But we have to stop this protection, and we have a victory from MAHA. So thanks for having me, Tony.
And those are really great points. We can't ever be, it can never be MAHA to let any area, whether it's big pharma or big food or big ag or any group of companies, have a liability shield. Companies have to stand behind their products. And if you want to have real change, and if you believe in real science, you believe that we can always do better. that anything, any circle we draw, we can draw another circle around that. We can have a better outcome. So whatever side of any argument you're on, you should be willing to have a system that forces you to make an argument and that allows people who have better arguments to win in the marketplace of ideas. But let's go back to what, so thanks so much for coming on. And in fact, I'm probably going to see you in about 20 minutes because I'm at Gary Brecka's place right now.
I have to get in an Uber. I'm going to be late.
See you soon.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
But let's go back to what Charles said, and it's such a great point. And the point is that we can't write off anybody. We want to engage with everyone. And I've said it before, and I'm just going to keep on saying it. We want to talk to everyone. We want to hear all of the ideas from all the different stakeholders. We want to engage with all the companies that are out there, with big food companies, big ag companies, pesticide companies, everyone, because we want to believe in real science. We want to get to the best outcomes. And we believe that nothing is really cut and dry, and that everything has to be discussed, and that we should engage with everybody to get the best health outcomes. So, that sort of, openness to real change, real food, real new ideas. That's what this is all about. Next up, we have Russell Brand. He is open to ideas more than anybody who I can imagine. And his mind works faster. He thinks more clearly, loses me some of the time, is wiser, is more poetic than anybody in the MAHA movement. So welcome once again. And I just look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Well, thanks, Tony. Thanks very much for that. I was thinking, how's this segue ever going to land? And how come you're meeting some of the other guests for like coffees and stuff? That seems a little bit unfair. You're going off with old Daniel.
Because you told me you were going to New York. If you'd stayed in Florida, or if you told me if you're still in Florida, I would have called you and we would have met for coffee.
Thank you. All right, fair enough. It's as often is the case, it's my responsibility. I've got to remember that. I keep looking outside of myself to condemn other entities for things that are my responsibility. I was meant to come to New York to go on Megyn Kelly. I'm looking forward to getting on there, but I'm probably going to wait till we're sort of promoting the book I'm doing, in fact, with you, Tony. But I was very interested about what you said about remaining open-hearted and open-minded and in dialogue with people that perhaps, I reckon there's a lot of people on this call, I know there are because, I've come to the event and I hang out with people that are sort of long-time activists. I'm thinking in particular of the sort of MAHA mums and the people that got out ahead. And in a sense, the people that, I'm going to say, midwifed Secretary Kennedy into the radicalism that seemed that it would leave him forever in the wilderness, had it not been for the sort of set of extraordinary miracles that began with him running as an independent candidate for the president, via the earlobe of Donald Trump, ended up with him becoming the Secretary of the HHS. Those people, sometimes I wonder, and I feel it particularly in DC, and I feel it myself too, sometimes I can't help but feel that, that list, that litany you gave there, Tony, the people that are making pesticides, the people that are running Walmart, the people that are running big tech organizations. Sometimes I guess I reach for the sort of reductive simplicity of thinking of them in terms of enmity, of us thinking, look, man, we ain't got time to persuade Google, Alphabet, or the deep state nefarious forces behind media manipulation, your 77th Brigade, your logically AIs, the groups that de-amplify important and true messaging that during the COVID pandemic, for example, hysterically condemned as peddlers of misinformation many people that we now know are truth tellers. And one of the great victories of the MAHA coalition is that we now have in office people that were regarded as crackpots and lunatics such a short time ago. Excuse me, that was just briefly my phone ran out of battery. I'm on the edge of running out of battery, both the phone and me personally. And But your message of reconciliation and open-heartedness is an important one. The brilliant American comedian Dave Chappelle sort of talked about the reconciliatory period in South Africa after the release of the activist become president Nelson Mandela. Chappelle said there was a period of reconciliation rather than vengeance. And I suppose too the handling of the fall of the Cold War is an example of that. And Martin Luther King, who learned so much from the civil disobedience of Gandhi, I'm sure demonstrated in ways that I don't have enough knowledge of American political history to cite now, that we have to open-heartedly, said Gandhi, approach, in his case, after the botched division of that region by British colonialists. I always want to blame France, really. I always want to say, was it France that colonized the world? But it was Britain. It was Britain that started that mentality, or at least ran with that mentality when the European powers were rampaging around the world, turning everything, land, people, minerals, the air itself into a resource, denying the sacred component that is ultimate, the sacred component that holds all, that is not secondary, but primary. Gandhi said that we must reconcile Christian, Muslim, Jew. Gandhi said India is a nation of 70,000 villages. Each of them should be independent wherever possible, democratically run, trading only when necessary. And that great, brilliant, obstreperous and recalcitrant Indian genius, Gandhi, I suppose would endorse Tony Lyons' mentality when it comes to reaching out a reconciliatory hand towards people that ultimately must be human beings. When I think of those names, those powerful men, those masters of the universe, those that trade in tech platforms and verticals, your Palantirs and your oracles, run by these sort of endless oligarchical Larrys, they're human beings like you and me that will die one day, aside from uploading a consciousness into some throbbing chip system somewhere ever called. The hand will come, the death will come, eternity available to us all, but mortality, parenthesizing every life necessarily. So you're right, Tony, while we're here and while we're alive, we should act in grace and in forgiveness, for we have been forgiven. We have been forgiven by grace. So, mate, maybe that's one of the things we need to do. We need to talk to the people, the people that own Monsanto, the people that own Unilever, the people that own all these organizations. I mean, Tony, when I see you in the jaws of New York City, standing in the lobby of some formidable media organization that I know would tell 1,000 lies about me a second if they thought it could shut me or you or whoever makes a difference next up for 5-10 seconds. I think, I hope Tony's going to be okay in there. There be dragons, as they used to put on the old maps, those cartographers of old who knew that there were oceans as yet unvisited. And as your great Herman Melville said, Noah's flood is still upon the earth. And as astrophysicists agree, in fact, their empirical evidence relies on it, the Big Bang is still happening. Creation is still happening. We are making this world as we live in it. Tony, let us make it in the spirit of reconciliation and forgiveness. I've gone 1 minute and 42 seconds over. But, you can't.
It was worth every second of it.
God bless you.
It was worth every second.
Thanks, man.
And when I look, Russell, at, the things people have said, towards you, the things people have charged you with, the things people are saying now about Gary Brecka, the things people have said for so long about Bobby Kennedy, that he's a radical, he's an outsider, he's dangerous, he's scary, he's anti-science. But, who are the people who are saying that? Those are the people who are really anti-science. They don't believe in dialogue or debate or reaching out to the humanity in our fellow human beings to see whether there is something redeemable because I think there's something redeemable in every one of those people out there who have produced products that have poisoned the public. And I think we want to reach out to them and we want to get them to do a better job. That's, we want to forgive them for what they've done. We want to make it possible for them to make as much money as they can possibly make. But for the third time today, I'm going to say, make that money by helping people, by curing people, by making people's lives better, rather than lying to people and poisoning people. And I think, and I hope that that's possible. And I think you're a big part of it, that you have that spirit, that hopefulness, that just incredible lyrical ability that none of the rest of us have. And that's a part of the reason why you can help us help everybody. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'd happily exchange being called a radical for being called a rapist. But aside from that, I'm pretty down with you.
I believe in you.
Praise the Lord. Thanks, man.
You too. Okay, so let's wind down with, I just want to say, thank you for joining us. It's been another great MAHA Media moment. And thanks for tuning in each week. Thanks to all of the speakers who came on. We're going to try to bring you every week people who have strong points of view, people who disagree with each other, people who are from the government, from big corporations, from the private sector, people who are activists. And listen to all of them, weigh their arguments, their perspectives. That's what real science is. So, and then read the MAHA report on Substack. It's an incredible sort of summation of what's going on each week. Go to the MAHA Institute roundtables. Each year, we're going to have the historic MAHA Summit that's going to bring together all kinds of powerful stakeholders, politicians, the owners, the top people at big corporations. Read the legislative tracker, because the midterms are just so incredibly vital to the future of this country and the opportunity for President Trump and Secretary Kennedy to get the job done, to really to let President Trump be the MAHA president, and then come to our parties, get on our mailing list, help us in this battle, read our books, follow all of the influencers that you see on this show. We can have power. We can have incredible power, and we can use that power to change the world. And we're going to harness every bit of the power we have. We're going to engage with every cabinet member, every member of government who will talk to us, every big corporation who wants to send their people in to discuss things with us. What we care about is having better health outcomes. And so, in that quest, we want to be a really powerful source for the Trump administration going into the midterms. I just want to keep on saying that. The midterms are so important. People in this country overwhelmingly want the administration to fight to make Americans healthy. And they know that hasn't happened in the past. And we, as the MAHA movement, want to be partners in that movement. And so following this call, you're going to get an email that's going to have cuts from, lots of the people who spoke on this call, updates on things that are going on in states all around the country and what you can do to help. So help us grow this powerful movement. Go to our website, engage with us in every way you can, and come back next week, 4 p.m. on Wednesday, and I hope you have a great weekend.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.